YouTube world, welcome to NamzyMercy talk show, and today I talk about life events that actually change our outlook of life in the positive or the negative. These events, some of them, some people, some studies or some scholars have thought that such events do not happen at any age, but maybe specifically at certain points in life. But others say they can happen at any time. Others say they don't happen that common, and others say they happen as common as it is to breathe. Okay, so these life events, really, for me, I belong to the school of thought that says a life event can actually take place at any point. It's an event, so it has taken place. Now, a critical life event is something that brings about or necessitates a change on how you're going to move forward after it has taken place. So critical life events are things like marriage. It's a blessing, it's a wonderful thing, but it does change a lot. Having a child is a blessing, but it changes a lot. Divorce is a negative and it changes a lot. Death, it's a change and it causes a lot. So these are critical life events, like, you know, losing a job. That's a life event. It's a critical life event because it demands a turning around of how life was into how it's now going to be in the new way of living. So critical life events are definitely going to happen at some point, and what determines the critical life event is not another person, but it's the person to whom that event has occurred. What may look to be absolutely normal and ordinary to you may be very critical to another and change their perspective of life completely. But how they handle it is what you need to pay attention, because while to you it looks like an ordinary event, it's nothing that has happened. To another person, this is a critical event that can completely transform their lives. Others, luckily, it pushes them onto the positive, but sometimes others, it pushes them onto the negative. A normal thing like having a child, even by a married couple, many times in African society we do miss this, because we believe that when a child is born, it's a beautiful thing, it's a wonderful thing, and we do not sometimes realize that the young mother or even the older mother, the having of a child can completely send them into depression. They can have what is called postpartum depression. This is the depression that occurs after you have a child. And the question I have is, many times, is it diagnosed? Is it recognized? Is it dealt with? Sometimes I feel like it's not. I remember when I was having my last child, the hospital was saying you have to be alone, and I had to emotionally play the game of crying and being broken, so they didn't leave me alone, because I had the knowledge that having a child is a challenging situation. Even though I was a second-time mother, for me, I knew it was going to be a challenge. And to imagine being left alone with an operation and a child to nurse, I felt like that was like, are you punishing me or what? Like, seriously, are you trying to punish me? So for me, recognizing that there was a possibility for me to enter into depression because of the healing process of the body and the demands of a newly born baby, I could end up going to postpartum depression. But I didn't argue out like, these are my rights, I know my rights. No, but what I did is I had to play emotional games with the doctors and the nurses, but completely crying until they gave up and allowed me to have someone on my bedside. But I felt like that was not a good practice, and I know that in our country it's practiced a lot. And so today I want to talk about this one thing, and postpartum depression. Many mothers, young and older alike, do not get diagnosed and do not get the necessary help to deal with it. Many times, especially in our government hospitals here in our country, Zambia, there is a rule that a young mother or an older mother, any woman who has recently birthed a child in the government hospital, there was a policy. I don't know if it's still there. It's been a while since I had a baby, but it was policy that the mother during labor must be alone with no one on the bedside, and after they give birth, they still should be alone with no one on the bedside. I felt like, are we even aware of what we are doing? Because normally you find in a ward, a nurse is overwhelmed because there's so many mothers, and the patient nurse ratio is not always very Very good. So you find maybe one or two nurses to a ratio of 10 mothers and 10 babies. How is she going to manage it? Sometimes she has someone in labor who is having a challenge, and she has these other mothers who have already given birth, and they too need their attention. And you find that without realizing, a rule of saying you have to be alone with the baby when the baby is born, even if you're a second-time mother, can highly trigger or actually enhance the resulting of postpartum depression. And many times I ask myself, is it diagnosed? Are we looking after the mothers in our country? Are we paying attention to the postpartum depression? I hear stories of some mothers who the child says, well, my mother just hated me and she still hates me. And sometimes I wonder, wasn't the feeling of hatred or whatever something maybe birthed right there during the time the child was born? Was the mother given the support? Was she recognized to be having postpartum depression? You know, the likings where you find a mother who doesn't want anything to do with their child. Sometimes it's not that the mother is being cheeky, she's not being a good person, she's going through postpartum depression, and we need to be able to diagnose it, and we need to be able to help these mothers. And I'm appealing to anybody in authority to say, are we paying attention to this condition? And are we putting in place policies that are going to work well for our citizens? Or are we just not in the caring mood? Because I remember that if I spoke about my rights when I was told that I have to remain alone, if I spoke about my rights while in labor, most likely the nurses were going to hate me. So what I did is I just said, being a victim, I just started crying, and I cried. I cried. The nurse tried to calm me down. I kept crying. I played emotional games. I said, you see, my brother died in this hospital. It was true. My brother died a few months ago in this hospital. Actually, the previous month, my young brother had just passed on in that hospital, and earlier, 6 months earlier, my dad had passed on in the hospital. So I was using it as an opportunity to cry. And I remember they tried to tell my mom, talk to your daughter. She called me. She said, I'm in the corridor, I'm not far. I said, I want you by my bedside, and I kept crying. They had to call the senior officer who came, and he said, Madam, but this is not your first child. Why are you crying? I said, I'm not crying because of labor. I'm crying because you want me to be alone. You people are depressing me. And I just cried. Well, until the senior officer was able to say, let the mother come and be with her. And I was with my mom the entire time until we were discharged out of hospital. But for many people, it didn't happen like that at that time. They had to be alone. And the question I had is, here's a new mother. She's having her first child. Or maybe a woman after a challenging pregnancy. Or just a woman who we don't even understand her psychological makeup at that particular time. Being taught to go through labor all by herself for some hours just by herself, and the nurse is checking on her every now and then, having a baby and having to nurse the exhaustion or that comes with childbirth, or the challenges that come with having a baby, and then the baby having to need so much attention, and you say the mother should be alone. Maybe we need to be careful. Are we not missing out cases of people ending up getting depressed because of how we have dealt with it? So I want you to know, maybe you're a mother and you felt strange towards your child when the child was born. You're not a bad woman, you're not a bad person, you just need help. You never got cancer. It was a critical life event that took place, and that critical life event called having a baby negatively impacted your mindset, and at that point you became depressed and you just needed counseling so that your emotions get back to themselves. For others, they on their own they are able to get back, but for others it may never happen like that. So maybe it's years later, you still need to find a counselor, get that help that you need. You are not crazy, you are not different. You are different, of course, but you are not any worse than any other mother. You just got sick, like we all can get sick from any disease. So from me, NamzyMercy, I'm saying there's something called postpartum depression, and we need to look at it and ensure that when a young mother or even an older mother has a baby, are we paying attention? From me, NamzyMercy, on that note, it's bye-bye and God bless you.